Warning! This is not your safe space. This is your wake-up call. We're about to tackle the raw, the controversial, and the uncomfortable. If you came here for scripted narratives and soft edges, you're in the wrong place. Tonight, we're cutting through the spin. We're calling out the lies, and we're facing head-on the reality of a movement shaken by tragedy. Viewer discretion isn't just advised, it's required.
Charlie Kirk's assassination shook the conservative movement to its core, and the ripples are still being felt across the country. Tributes continue. The media spin machines are grinding at full speed, and people on both sides are asking the same question. What now? How do we as a movement process this grief, this anger, and this loss of a leader in the middle of the fight? Tonight, we're not sugarcoating it. We're breaking down the fallout, the propaganda, and the path forward. Because Monday isn't about mourning alone, it's about momentum. This is Data and Dissonance, and we're diving straight in. All right, folks, it's Monday, and if you thought I was going to tackle this one solo, you're crazier than CNN trying to define what a mostly peaceful protest looks like. So let's bring in the crew one by one, and as always, I'll keep them honest. First up, Brian, the man who thinks Red Bull should be considered a patriotic duty and who's probably already tweeted justice for Kirk about 200 times this morning. He calls it MAGA fire. But half the time, I think he just runs on gas station energy drinks and pure rage. Next, we've got Rachel, the voice of reason. Or at least the voice that tries to fact-check Brian before he breaks another microphone. She's like the designated driver of this podcast, making sure the rest of us don't steer it into the ditch. Then there's Daniel, the guy who has more red string than Hobby Lobby and probably thinks Kirk's assassination is somehow tied to aliens, fluoride, and the Denver airport. If paranoia burned calories, he'd be a swimsuit model. And finally, Skylar, the only person here who probably cried harder over Greta Thunberg's TikTok suspension than over gas prices hitting $5. She swears she's here for balance, but I think she just likes being the punching bag for 3 conservatives and a conspiracy theorist. And there you have it, the crew in all their glory. Buckle up, because if you thought last week was wild, tonight we're digging into the fallout, the spin, and the fight ahead. This episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. If you haven't dived in yet, start with The Covenant Protocol and The Prophet Directive. 2 high-stakes thrillers that mix political intrigue, cutting-edge tech, and the kind of conspiracies that make Daniel's hair stand up. And here's the kicker. Book 3, Black Echo Rising, is on the way. You can grab the first 2 right now on Amazon, Kindle, or wherever you get your books. If you like action with brains, these are for you. And don't forget to check out our Data and Dissonance merch, because listening to the truth is good, but sipping it out of your own branded mug is better. We've got 3 coffee blends roasted right here in the US. High Lakes Light Roast, Rock Creek Medium Roast, and Bitter Root Dark Roast. Plus mugs, tumblers, hats, hoodies, bumper stickers. Gear that actually says something. Head over to dataanddissonance.printify.me and stock up today. Every order helps keep this show alive and independent. All right, let's get into it. Charlie Kirk's assassination wasn't just another headline. It was a gut punch to the conservative movement and a turning point in this political moment. Over the past week, we've seen vigils, tributes, and rallies, but also spin, mockery, and flat-out lies from the usual suspects in the media. Some folks are grieving, some are angry, and some are asking whether this tragedy will silence us or fuel us. That's the question tonight. What does this loss really mean for the movement? And how do conservatives move forward from here? Charlie Kirk's assassination wasn't just a headline, it was a gut punch. The question is, how are conservatives processing this loss? Is it grief, anger, motivation, or all 3?
It's all 3, Artie. Conservatives are grieving, no doubt, but they're also furious. We lost someone who wasn't afraid to speak directly to the base. And the worst part? If the roles were reversed, the media would have turned this into a national day of mourning. Instead, Kirk's death gets treated like some throwaway story, and that makes our anger boil over. But anger alone isn't enough. It has to turn into motivation. The left thinks this is going to break us. but they just reminded us why we fight.
You're dead right about that double standard, Brian. If this had been a liberal activist, we'd have candlelight vigils on every network. But when it's a conservative, suddenly it's just another news cycle. And yeah, motivation has to be the answer, because grief without action doesn't change a damn thing.
I think for a lot of people, it's a progression. First, it's grief, because Kirk was a husband and father before anything else. Then anger, because of the way the media and critics jumped on the story with zero compassion. And then motivation, because when someone is killed for what they believe, the only way to honor them is to keep speaking even louder. Conservatives don't have the luxury of silence right now. We've got to push forward.
That's spot on, Rachel. Grief, anger, motivation, it's a cycle. And if we stop at the first two, we lose. But if we hit that third step, motivation, then Kirk's voice doesn't end with him. It multiplies.
Emotions are part of it, but let's not pretend this is just about feelings. The timing, the messaging, the way the story was spun immediately, it stinks of orchestration. Somebody benefits from this, and it's not conservatives. When leaders are assassinated, it's never random. It's about destabilizing the movement. And if conservatives don't ask who benefits and who pulled the strings, then we're missing the bigger picture.
And that's why we keep you around, Daniel. You're the guy pulling out the red string when everyone else is reaching for tissues. And hey, maybe you're right. The timing does line up a little too neatly for it to be coincidence.
I think conservatives are definitely grieving and angry, but I'd argue the whole country feels that in some way. Another life lost to political violence should be a wake-up call for everyone. Where I push back is this. If the conservative takeaway is just more division, then nothing changes. Yes, Kirk was a leader, but he also helped build a culture where everything is existential warfare. That kind of rhetoric breeds tragedy. Processing this loss means asking if we want to keep repeating the cycle.
Skylar, I'll give you this. You're consistent. You always find a way to blame both sides. But let's be real. Nobody was out there celebrating when liberal leaders got shot. Yet we've seen plenty of ghouls mocking Kirk's death online. That's not balance. That's hate masquerading as commentary. The second piece of this puzzle is the media. They didn't just report on Kirk's death. They spun it and fast. So how is the media framing this? And what does it say about journalism in this country right now?
It's disgusting, Artie. If this had been a left-wing figure, we'd already have Netflix documentaries lined up. Instead, the media barely covered the funeral arrangements before they started running opinion pieces about how Kirk was controversial and divisive. That's their polite way of saying they think he deserved it. It's propaganda, pure and simple. And conservatives need to understand, these people don't just disagree with us, they hate us.
And the proof's right there in their headlines, Brian. They couldn't even let the family grieve before they started editorializing his life. That's not journalism. It's vindictive obituary writing.
What stood out to me is how fast they moved to frame this as inevitable. Instead of asking hard questions, who did this, why, what failures allowed it, they jumped right to, well, he was polarizing. That's victim blaming, plain and simple. And it sets a dangerous precedent. If you can excuse violence against someone because of their words or politics, then we've just normalized political assassination.
Exactly, Rachel. It's like saying the victim brought it on themselves, which, last I checked, is the worst possible standard in any situation. But apparently for conservatives, it's fair game.
This isn't incompetence. It's intentional. The media didn't investigate. They distracted. Paint Kirk as controversial. Paint the shooter as unstable. And suddenly, nobody asks the real questions. Why was security so thin? Why did the shooter's background disappear so quickly? And why did officials move so fast to shut this story down? They control the narrative because they know if people look deeper, it wouldn't add up. This isn't journalism, it's narrative management.
And you're right, Daniel. It's not that they don't know how to dig deeper, it's that they don't want to. They know the second they shine a light in the wrong place, someone higher up yanks the cord.
Let me be clear. I don't agree with the media turning this into comedy bits or smug think pieces. That's cruel. But let's not pretend only one side does this. Conservatives have turned liberal deaths into memes, too. The bigger problem here is that news isn't news anymore. It's entertainment, it's clickbait, and it's all about outrage. Kirk's assassination just got fed into the same machine, and it's disgusting across the board.
Skylar, I'll give you credit for calling out the cruelty. But here's the thing. Conservatives might push back hard, but we don't celebrate when someone gets assassinated. There's a difference between political mockery and dancing on a grave, and the left crossed that line without hesitation. Here's the heart of it. What comes next? Does Kirk's assassination fracture the conservative movement, or does it forge it stronger? Is this the spark that unites people, or the blow that leaves us scattered?
Artie, this is the wake-up call. We either let this break us, or we turn it into the fuel that keeps the movement alive. And I'll tell you right now, conservatives aren't in the mood to back down. The base is fired up like I haven't seen in years. Kirk's death will be used as a rallying cry, not a retreat. If the left thought they could silence us, they've already failed, because for every leader they take out, 10 more voices are going to rise up.
Exactly, Brian. That's how movements survive, by multiplying. You don't kill an idea with a bullet, you strengthen it. And if conservatives channel this energy right, we'll come out tougher, louder, and more unified.
I think it could go either way, honestly. This tragedy could unify conservatives who realize the stakes have never been higher, or it could deepen divides within the movement if people start blaming each other for strategy and rhetoric. The challenge now is leadership. Who steps up to fill the vacuum Kirk left? If that void is filled by voices who can inspire and organize, then the movement grows stronger. But if it's just infighting and finger-pointing, then the other side wins without lifting another finger.
And that's the danger, Rachel. The vacuum. If nobody steps up, grief turns into chaos. But if someone grabs the mantle, the movement gets sharper instead of weaker. History shows us, moments like this either fracture or forge.
Look, Artie, you can't assassinate a leader without creating martyrs. That's how movements throughout history have gained momentum. If anything, this is going to push conservatives to dig deeper and fight harder. But here's the thing. We also need to recognize the playbook being used here. Assassinations, cover-ups, narrative control, it's all designed to destabilize. If conservatives don't wise up and realize they're in a bigger game, then yeah, it could fracture. But if they see the strings being pulled, it could unify like never before. And once people wake up, there's no putting them back to sleep.
You're not wrong, Daniel. Assassinations don't silence movements, they supercharge them. And if this was part of a bigger playbook, then the worst mistake the other side made was thinking we wouldn't see it coming.
I think conservatives are going to rally in the short term, no question. Grief and anger are powerful unifiers. But the real test comes 6 months from now, when emotions settle. Will the energy last, or will it fade into the same old divisions? If conservatives can turn this into constructive momentum, new leaders, new strategies, real outreach, then yes, it can forge the movement stronger. But if it's just more outrage and more echo chamber, then the cycle repeats, and nothing truly changes.
And that's where we'll have to prove you wrong, Skylar. Because conservatives don't forget easily. This wasn't just a headline. It was blood spilled in the middle of a political war. If that doesn't forge resolve, nothing will. We've dug through the grief, the anger, the spin, and the questions. But at the end of the day, this isn't just about Charlie Kirk the man. It's about what his life and death mean for the movement and for America. So let's close it out the way we always do, with final thoughts from the crew.
My final thought is simple. This was meant to silence us, but it won't. If anything, it's going to amplify our voices. Kirk's death should remind every conservative that the fight isn't optional, it's necessary. And when the media laughs or the left mocks, that should light a fire under us, not scare us off. We don't honor him by crying in silence. We honor him by turning his message into a movement that can't be ignored. They can bury a man, but they can't bury an idea, and they sure as hell can't bury the truth.
For me, the takeaway is clarity. Tragedy strips away the spin and shows us what matters most. Kirk was controversial, yes, but he mattered because he inspired people to speak, to organize, to believe their voices counted. His death is a reminder of the cost of conviction, and it's also a reminder that the health of a democracy depends on how we treat even those we disagree with. If violence becomes normalized, no movement survives. The only way forward is to meet loss with courage, anger with wisdom, and grief with resolve.
History shows us what happens when leaders are assassinated. Movements get stronger. You don't stop ideas with a bullet, you fuel them. And make no mistake, this wasn't random. This was a message, whether from one actor or from powers bigger than we can see. They wanted to destabilize conservatives, maybe even break us apart. But what they've done instead is plant the seed of unity. Because once you see that the system will go this far to silence someone, you don't crawl back into line. You dig in, you fight harder, and you start asking the questions they're scared of us answering.
My final thought is that moments like this test not just conservatives, but the whole country. If we let grief and anger turn into deeper division, then the cycle repeats, and no one wins. But if conservatives can channel this into constructive action, building leaders, broadening their reach, and lowering the temperature, then maybe something better can come from tragedy. Kirk's death should be a moment of reflection, not just reaction. Because, in the end, violence can't be the language of politics, or we'll all lose more than just leaders. We'll lose the country itself.
You know, I've been a conservative for over 3 decades, and I've seen our movement take punches before. I've seen us mocked, ridiculed, sidelined, and underestimated. But this was different. This wasn't just another hit piece or another election loss. This was a man cut down for what he stood for. And whether you agreed with every word he ever said or not, the fact is he built something. He built a movement that gave young conservatives a place to stand. His death is meant to be a warning, to scare us back into silence, to make us second guess whether speaking out is worth the risk. But let me tell you, it is. It always will be. Because freedom isn't free, and the truth has always come with a price. We don't honor Charlie Kirk by whispering. We honor him by shouting, by organizing, by refusing to be cowed. If they thought this would weaken us, they miscalculated. Because this movement isn't about one man. It's about millions of voices who refuse to be silenced. And as long as I have a mic in front of me, I'll keep saying it. Speak truth, stir thought. Always.